Okay, so the people, I mean, if you heard Tony Blair before, Tony Blair is the former British Prime Minister who was in Britain described as George Bush's sidekick, I guess. But he was appointed to be the representative of the quartet, right? And he was supposed to go there to the quartet, which includes the United Nations, the United States, United Nations Security Council, the United Nations, United States, the EU, and Russia. So those four. So he was their representative trying to broker a peace deal. Before the bombardment came, before the intensified attack, he was in Washington, D.C. actually talking about we have to eliminate the resistance. We have to eliminate Palestinian resistance, and we have to eliminate Hamas. That was his stated goals. And so everything has to be taken into this account. Now for Israel, there is no distinction actually between Hamas and anybody else. And for us, there is no distinction when you're under attack. That's why when we went out to the streets, we were protesting with the Palestinian flag, not Hamas, not Jabha, not different factional flags, because we understood this to be an attack on the entire population of the Gaza Strip, right? So their goal was that to trade, when I say trade rights for money, what rights am I talking about? I'm talking about the right that I told you about, which is the right to return to your homes and land. That's what they want to trade. So the fundamental issue is actually what they want us as Palestinians is to give up on our right to return, to give up the resistance to occupation, to give up and to just say thank you. This is what they want, and this will never happen, actually. I think they're delusional. I mean, they're delusional. You know, why do I say this? There are the population of the Palestinian population today. You know, we are 10 million people in the world are Palestinians. Okay, 10 million Arab Palestinians in the world today. 7.2 million of us are living in forced exile. We are the largest refugee population in the world today. I'm not very proud of that fact. I'd rather not be a refugee, right? But we are the largest refugee population in the world today, and we are the ones who have suffered the longest in contemporary times in terms of being denied our fundamental right. The Bosnians, their right of return was implemented through these Dayton Accords, the Bosnians and the Kosovars. The Rwandans have had their rights, even German Jews who had the right to return to Germany after World War II. All of those people, Afghanis too, I mean, all of those people have had their right to return implemented. And the longest outstanding refugee population in the world today is actually the Palestinian. And if they expect that by defeating, which they didn't, because their stated goal was to break Hamas. They have not broken Hamas, actually, and they have not broken all the resistance, any of the resistance fractions in Gaza. But if their stated goal was that, it has very clearly failed. And if their stated goal was to break the Palestinian people's desire to return to their homes and lands, they are dreaming. They're basically living, as I said, they are delusional. There were other possibilities that have been raised. One is that this attack may have been an electioneering effort in Israel, because Israel is going through these, its elections. Maybe, that may have contributed. It's in Israel, unfortunately, in the population there, you do gain points by killing Arabs. You do. You get electoral points if you kill Arabs. And if you look at the graffiti that some of their soldiers left in the attacks, and how many people in Israel itself supported the bombardment of the most densely populated place on the planet, over 90%, according to some polls. So I think, yes, I mean, it's probably a contributing factor. There's another one that I heard, that I read about, although I don't buy into it, which is that offshore, off the shore of Gaza, there's a wealth of oil now. They found some, some gas. If they did, they probably build a museum. But I think it's a ridiculous reason to actually bombard the population, because, I mean, it was anyway, the place was sealed and they could do anything they like without having to bombard the population. So I don't buy into that construct, that possible reason. The only one that I buy is the one that I told you, which was that their intention was to cause massive damage to the people in Gaza with a view, in fact, to the future, the infrastructure, with a view to the future of that being that they would be able to trade rights for money. I want to talk about one last thing, if I may, which is the media. The media, the way actually, I want to talk about American media, and less about unbiased media. The American media was, in fact, at the start, especially at the start of this bombardment of Gaza, was absolutely disgusting. It was actually worse than the Zionist media. They gave the false story that Hamas, for example, and they labeled it always as Hamas instead of all of Gaza, but that was Hamas that broke the ceasefire, whereas in fact it was very clearly documented, and actually CNN, the Zionist News Network, or CNN as you know it, they very clearly, they retracted this later. They retracted that that Hamas actually had broken the ceasefire, because it's very well documented that on the 4th of November, as I mentioned earlier, it was Israel that went in and killed 6 Palestinians. So the media was very much actually in this country was very much propagating the Zionist, the Israeli perspective, and even in demonstrations that were taking place around the country, here in this country, they were deliberately underestimating how many people were going out in the streets, actually. In New York, they had a huge demonstration, and they underestimated. They said it was like 1,000 or 2,000, when it was very clearly tens of thousands that had gone out to the streets. So the American media was, I think was very much became part of the political cover that the Bush administration was actually giving to Israel while it was conducting this war. So it became part and parcel of the design. What defeated the American media, though, and I say very, very clearly, what defeated the American media was the foolish strategy that the Zionists employed, the foolish calculation, in fact, that the Zionists did, which was this. They said to all foreign journalists that you are not allowed to enter Gaza. They sealed Gaza, and so all we saw when Americans were, or even British were, speaking about the Gaza situation, they were standing outside the strip, and you would see, smoke in the distance. But at the same time, Al Jazeera and other Arab news agencies, and actually Press TV of Iran, was inside Gaza, and they were transmitting images to the world. And so CNN and other places were actually forced in the end to take those images and to make them available to the rest of the world too. So for some reason they figured, in their racist thinking, they figured that the West, the civilized white West, will not accept images from Arab TV television stations, which they did.